parliamentary control, there are parliamentary committees and PSU chiefs appear before these committees. Day-to-day functioning should not be controlled by the government at all. I have always been of the view that we lack this fundamental clarity. And because we lack this fundamental clarity, the performance of our PSUs is sadly lacking. This particular institute has done a lot of work on PSUs, lot of work. And in particular, Dr. Mishra has done a lot of work. He has published a number of books and he has also guided books on this subject. And I recall quoting him, and these figures are a little outdated, but nowadays you can log on to the websites and Google and get the updated figures. But I remember noting that in a study done for the Planning Commission by the Institute of Public Enterprises in 2006, Dr. Mishra had pointed out in his paper that public sector accounts for 10% of the gross domestic produce of the country. These figures will be more or less same. They could be plus minus 1 or 2%, not more than that. The investments at that time were in the range of 15 to 20 lakh crores. This, of course, would have gone up in the last 6-7 years. But on the whole, if you take the PSU as a sector, it is not making profits. Now, I have worked in 3-4 assignments, but the main assignment where I spent substantial time was in Singareni Collieries Company Limited. The abbreviation is SCCL. It should interest most of us to know that Singareni has a very interesting history. In 1870, coal was discovered in what is today Khammam district in Yalandu Mandal, and the name of the village was Singareni. And then at that time, the Nizams were ruling Hyderabad state. A group of Britishers, a gentleman called Dr. William King, who was a geologist, he established that yes, there is coal in this area. Then some Britishers got together and in 1886 they floated a company, Hyderabad Deccan Coal Company, and that continued till 1920 when the name changed to Singareni Collieries. They changed the name from Hyderabad Deccan and ownership also changed. Singareni in fact became one of the first companies to be quoted on the London Stock Exchange in 1920. So it is a very interesting history. The other thing is that most of you will be knowing that there is no coal in South India other than the Godavari Pranhita Valley. There is lignite and Neyveli in Tamil Nadu, but there is no coal. Recently, the Geological Survey of India has established some coal belts in continuation of Khammam district in East and West Godavari. But as you know, from 2nd June, there are 2 states, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So Telangana, after some time, may not be the only southern state where coal is mined. Probably AP will also be mining coal, but that is to be seen in the future. And whether it will be through a PSU or it will be through the private sector also has to be seen. I would just share 2-3 important concepts on PSUs. And we can say these are the core areas or the key concepts. The first is, as towards the end of his talk, Mr. Padmanabhaiah mentioned that he always took responsibility for his team and protected his junior colleagues from the political establishment and gave complete freedom for all activities except wasting time and playing golf maybe. So the first thing, the point I want to take from that is leadership. If you are in charge of a PSU, the leadership aspects become more important. Because unlike a private company like Tata or Reliance or Birla or whatever you have, you are accountable to the country, to the nation. Every single Indian you are accountable to through Parliament, because you are a public sector undertaking. So the leadership becomes a key requirement for the successful conduct. The other point I would like to emphasize in a PSU is that CMDs have an average tenure of 2 or 3 years. It is very rare that a CMD in a PSU, in a public sector undertaking, will have a term exceeding 3 years, and sometimes there have been people for 5 years also. Now the question is, how can you make an impact in 2 to 3 years? And you inherit a long history of profit, loss, good practice, bad practice, whatever it may be. Therefore, leadership becomes vital. And one can't complain about the situation. One cannot control the situation, and one can't complain about the situation. Therefore, those of you who go into this area during your academic pursuits here must keep in mind the inherent constraints of leading a public sector undertaking given the constitutional provisions of our system. The third point I would like to make is again linked to our democratic structure. When we say accountable to Parliament, it means in the assembly, in the states, we are accountable to the state assemblies. So there are two types of PSUs, central public sector undertakings and state public sector undertakings. The simplest example is NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation Center, and in the state you have state power corporations, you have Transcos and Gencos now, and also what are called distribution companies after the unbundling and reforms. Now, how do you tackle the political element in administration? Accountability, I have already covered. Here I feel that each one of us as a citizen of the country must get sensitized to the fact that we are all stakeholders in each and every PSU, be it state or center. And we can't pass the buck, and we can't blame the management. Through our assembly, through the Parliament, being voters, the annual reports of PSUs are all in public domain. You can look at any report of any PSU in detail. They are published, printed documents. The audit reports are also in public domain. In fact, under the rules, annually on the floor of the assembly or on the floor of the Parliament, the PSU is bound to lay its annual report in a printed form, and the format is given, the chartered accountants have to certify. So I would urge each one of you as management students to get involved in some PSU and study that PSU, and then you can take up a case study on it as to what is happening in that particular PSU. And you have a system of attachments here. I would suggest to Dr. Mishra and his colleagues, you can get attachments with PSUs. I'm sure it is being done. There are internships also. You can do internships. Please do, if possible, one internship with a public sector corporation and one internship with a PSU. Then you will come to know firsthand what is the difference. What are the commonalities? What are the differences? And then instead of being an armchair critic, you will have a ground level appreciation of the realities of how to administer PSUs. I would just say that insofar as Singareni is concerned, I mean, it's documented now, and not only acrobatics have changed, but there are other books which have been published. I think two of them are available here in the IP library. The first one was published in 2003. It is called Gloom to Glory. Gloom to Glory, the stunning turnaround of Singareni Collieries. It's a printed book. In case it is not available, Professor Mishra can very easily, literally at a day's notice, get it from the corporate headquarters of Singareni, which is in Red Hills, near Lakdi Ka Pul. That's a very useful book, and that traces how the company was turned around. There is another book. This book is non-priced. It's an unpriced publication. The other book is a priced publication. It has been sold considerable copies, and that I'm 100% sure I remember giving here to IP, because I was on the board of governors of IP for 5 years in my capacity as CMD Singareni. At that time, the CMD Singareni was an ex officio member of the board, and that is called Eco-Friendly Coal Mining, the Singareni Approach. This was published in October 2005. Eco-Friendly Coal Mining, the Singareni Approach. This book is about the environmental policies of the company, how they were implemented. At this point of time, I am told that the environmental policies lack the focus and the energy that was there earlier, but even then they are amongst the best when compared to other coal mining companies under CIL, that is Coal India Limited. Insofar as the turnaround part is concerned, again there has been a major setback because of the creation of two states. So there were a movement in Singareni also of the trade unions along party lines, and that has affected the spirit of one family, one vision, one mission. But it can only be hoped that if the foundations are strong and the fundamentals are good, in course of time, the feeling will come back of one family, one vision, one mission, the spirit of Singareni. But it will not come back on its own, merely by the fluctuations of time or vicissitudes of time. It will come back only if serious efforts are made to bring it back. And Dr. Mishra in his introductory remarks had highlighted this about one family approach. I would like in my concluding remarks to just dwell a little on this and mention how it came about, and you will find it interesting. You see, till 1965, Singareni was doing reasonably well as a coal mining company. After 1965, the company went into a loss-making regime. And the main reason for that was the rise of a body called Sikasa, which was an extremist, in common language, Naxalite organization. And Singareni fell completely sick. It was so sick as an industry that it was referred in 1992 to the Board for Industrial and Financial Reconstruction, that is BIFR. The BIFR worked out a bailout package which worked for 3 years. But then the company again became sick in 1996 for a second time. And this time the BIFR was refusing to bail it out, saying, we did it 4 years ago, you have repeated the same mistakes, we are not willing to do it a second time. However, with great difficulty, the government of Andhra Pradesh, which is the majority stakeholder, 51% shares are with government of Andhra Pradesh, 49% with the union government, they managed a second package. But as part of the package, they went in for literally revolutionary reforms or seminal reforms. In 91-92, when the strength of the company was nearly 1,17,000 employees, 1,17,000, the number of strikes were 475. This, I believe, is a world record. No company in the world has had 475 strikes in 365 days. There were 123 trade unions and associations and 854 categories of employees when this peak of 475 was achieved, or whatever it is, in a negative sense. So this is how serious the situation was. The credo of one family started emerging from 97 January, when the then government in power took a political decision. And I want to highlight this point, and I'm sure my senior colleague will agree with me. In a democracy, the first requisite is political will. And all of us here and beyond this hall also represent political will, because we are all equal. There's no discrimination in our country on the grounds of so many things. Somebody can't say, I'm a millionaire, so I will have 1,000,000 votes. And somebody says, I earn 1 rupee a day, therefore I have 1 vote. Whether you are the president of the country or you are a person earning 0 rupees, both of us have only 1 vote. So political will is the first prerequisite. This political will was very much in evidence from 97 onwards. And that is how the turnaround process started. And by the time I had joined, which was towards the end of 2001, I found a very conducive atmosphere. Major reforms had been carried out. My immediate predecessor had done a fantastic job, and the government was fully backing. So within 2 years, we came out with this concept of one family, and then we extended it to the philosophy of Singarenianism, which is based in this credo, one family, one vision, one mission. And the logo of the company was amended towards the end of 2004, and this was incorporated. So to conclude, my submission would be, what I've tried to share with you is, number one, The public sector undertakings in our country need to function in a clear vision mission framework. This vision mission framework cannot come about as an accident of history. It has to evolve as a conscious decision taken by all of us as a democratic society, as reflected in our political institutions. Number two, in a democracy, each person is as responsible as a so-called elected member of the assembly or parliament, or a minister or a civil servant, because we all enjoy the same individual rights. Everybody is governed by the fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, the same political system. So we can't sit back and become drawing room critics and criticize those sitting in chairs of authority, saying kuch nahi kiya, kha liya, bana liya. Remember, when somebody is doing kuch nahi kiya, kha liya, bana liya, you are part of it. You cannot say, I am not part of it. Had I been in the chair, I would have done it differently. In that case, try to get into the chair and do it differently. But don't be an armchair critic. The third thing I have said is that in public sector undertakings, I have only touched on 3 or 4 core issues. Leadership is vital. Compare the functional environment between a PSU and a public sector undertaking as part of your internship or exposure, so that you appreciate. Number 4, very briefly, I have touched upon certain, very, very briefly, because published literature is available. Anybody interested can read the books. You can read Gloom to Glory, you can read Eco-Friendly Coal Mining, you can read Acrobatics of Change. It is documented, it is in print. Singareni has a good website, you can log on to it. It's not very far from here. Ramagundam is just about maybe 200 kilometers from where we are sitting right now. From Hyderabad, it is 235. A field visit can be organized by the IP. You can actually go to the coal mines and get a sense of them. But remember, we cannot pass on our responsibilities to others. We are all individually and collectively responsible. Let me wish you all the very best and thank Dr. Mishra and his team. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for highlighting the need for right leadership approach, also on rethinking the tenure of leaders in PSU. So you've also highlighted the need for political will in the success of PSUs. And with this, I thank you once again for being a part of this discussion here. May I now request any of the students who would like to address or come down here and put up any question, share your view?
Good evening to the dignitaries on the dais. Sir, Padmanabhaiah ji, I have a question regarding the Article 370. Why has it not been scrapped all these years? Do you think it's just because of the vote bank politics, or else the political affiliations, or else something else? What has not been scrapped? Article 370, the special privilege to the Kashmir.
Okay. Have you read 370? What does it say?
Special privileges to Kashmir.